As I pass the first Coca-Cola sign, I've completed the arc I started in NASCAR 3 through NASCAR 4 in the tri-oval. As I cross start-finish, my steering is centered and the car is neutral. About halfway between the second Coca-Cola sign and the cones on the left is when I'm going to start threshold braking and drop down to fourth gear. There's not a whole lot of grip here, so it's easy to lock up a wheel. If I do lock up, it's probably better to abort the corner than to try and turn in and spin into the waiting wall. Carry some trail braking through turn-in. The car will tend to move to oversteer here, and if it gets too loose, a mild goose of the throttle should bring it back in line. Be rolling onto power before apex, which is the radius change in the grass verge that's inside of that triangular shape of the white lines. As the car transitions off the banking, the balance will move to understeer, and since lifting the throttle is most likely fatal at this point, you better have completed your turning before apex. Here I turned in about a car length too early, was early to apex by a few feet, and late enough to the throttle that I lost about a fifth of a second into turn 3. Turn 2. Stay in fourth gear. Get tight to the wall on the inside. There's a lot of banking here, so you don't need to slow down, and there's a nice compression about 2/3 of the way through that will help you finish your arc. Avoid being more than the car's width off of the left. There's not enough time to transition from the right to left before turn 3. Turn 3. Still fourth gear. There are many people here who will get their downshift to third for turn 4 done now, but I don't like doing that since I feel that I have to overslow the car. Usually if I shift to third now, I'll spin from over-revving the engine. As you crest this half rise on approach, have the car centered as much as possible, otherwise the car will still be transitioning at braking or turn-in. Roll off the throttle as you crest and squeeze about half brake. Move to power to keep the rear from coming around. If I've done this right, then I'll have a mild push from apex to track out, but that's okay for right now. As I come off of the turn 3 apex, I'm setting up for turn 4. I'm going to smoothly come off the throttle onto small brakes and unwind the steering. I'll hit that bump that's right before track out, and the bump will cause oversteer, but just enough to move to a perfectly balanced and centered state, though still loaded on the left side. I'll brake a little more, turn in, and get my downshift to third done. I am expecting oversteer after turn in, so when it occurs I'm prepared. Try to get your right side wheels inside of the white line, but do avoid the cut course penalty as it's a pretty brutal one. For whatever reason, whenever I intentionally try to get my wheels over that line, I wind up cutting the corner badly and getting a penalty, and when I intentionally try to avoid the white line, I miss the apex and wind up mowing bushels of weeds. Turn 5, fourth gear. I'm going to turn in right about where the grass on the right ends and the infield track rejoins. As the car begins to move to terminal understeer, I'm going to come off the throttle, smoothly, and not chopping it, which would probably cause me to spin or to at least get major oversteer. Try to stay off of the curbing on the inside. Tagging it means you'll probably shoot off of the track on exit. Here I got a little lucky and hit just the perfect spot. Turn 6, third gear. Just like in turn 4, my entry is compromised by the previous corner. My line through 5 should have the car tracking out to just before the gravel road, which is where I'll open the steering, go about half brake, and downshift to third. Note that there's a small dip in the track right there, so the car will be prone to oversteer. This is a double apex corner, and hitting both apexes is definitely tricky. I managed to botch it somewhat here by turning in too soon and too aggressively. The first apex is easy to spot, right at the radius change in the concrete curb. As you get to the apex, start feeding in throttle, and when the car is pointed to the right of the big scoring tower, you should be pointed directly at the right edge of the track and be at full power. Stay as far right as you can on exit, but don't lift off of the throttle to do so. Because turns 5 and 6 are such a difficult complex, the entry for turn 7 tends to be all over the place, and the difficulty is compounded by the lack of reference points. Even worse is that this is the single most important corner on the track. Once you're at power here, you don't lift off the throttle for about a minute, so it's important to get this corner as right as you possibly can. As you clear the rise, turn in. Then as the track starts to climb again, come off the throttle. The car should want to oversteer, but again, that's easily fixed with a little throttle application or opening of the steering. Look for the Sunoco sign right at the edge. You should be hitting your apex and at full power just as the car is pointed at that Sunoco sign. As usual, I'm early, and this time I'm about half a car's width off of the apex. For turn 8, unwind the steering just a little bit and hold that arc until the banking. The apex is easy to spot. It's the little corner of grass at the exit. During NASCARs 1 and 2, your left tire should never go above the white line. As you begin to come out of NASCAR 2, center the wheel and let the car track out to the outside line. Don't drive over there, but let the car go as far to the outside as it will. I don't like staying to the left since you have to pinch the arc at exit and then badly pinch the arc at entry to NASCAR 3. However, if there's a car in front of you, you should exactly mimic them. You can pick up a tow from a car that's about 2 seconds away, and an optimal draft here is worth up to at least half a second. The ZMAX sign is where I'm going to begin my entry for NASCAR 3. A small steering input here will carry me all the way past start-finish. It takes a seemingly long time to cross the track, and my left wheels again go inside of the white line and stay there. My arc should carry me to the inside at the tri-oval and back to the right at start-finish.